The assassin's path. The meadow grass reached past Mira Underhill's knees as she ran, her small legs pumping with the boundless energy of a 10-year-old halfling who'd been cooped up all morning. Behind her, the voice of her mother called out, half exasperated, half amused. "Mira! We're leaving within the hour, and you haven't even packed your satchel." Mira pretended not to hear. The sun was warm on her face, and the river sparkled in the distance like scattered coins. She'd pack later. She always did, usually throwing things haphazardly into her bag at the last possible moment, while her father sighed and her mother clucked her tongue. They were used to it by now. The Underhill burrow sat nestled into a gentle hillside, its round green door visible from anywhere in the meadow. Smoke curled lazily from the chimney, and Mira could smell the bread her mother had baked that morning. It was supposed to be for the journey, but Mira had already snuck 2 thick slices, earning herself a swat with a wooden spoon. She was, by most accounts, a bit of a brat. 5 more minutes! She shouted back, though she'd already decided it would be at least 10. Maybe 15 if she could get away with it. Her father emerged from the burrow, a pack already strapped to his broad shoulders. For a halfling, Garrick Underhill was stocky and strong, his weathered hands calloused from tending the small farm that kept their family fed. He spotted Mira immediately, and shook his head with a knowing smile. "Your cousin Pip is bubbling over to see you," he called out. "Bet he's been ready since yesterday." "Pip's boring," Mira shot back, though secretly she was looking forward to seeing him. Pip lived 3 days' journey north, in a halfling settlement near the human city of Millhaven. The Underhills made the trip once a year, and for Mira, it was the highlight of her otherwise ordinary life. Ordinary but good. The meadow, the burrow, the river, this was home, and it was safe, and it was hers. She didn't know, as she finally trudged back toward the burrow to pack her satchel, that she would never see it again. The journey started well enough. The weather was fair, the roads dry, and her parents were in good spirits. They passed through small villages and farmland, waving to humans and dwarves who barely spared them a second glance. Halflings were common enough, just not particularly noteworthy. Too small to be threatening, too peaceful to be exciting. Afterthoughts, really? Mira didn't mind. She preferred it that way. Being overlooked meant people underestimated her, and she'd learned early that being underestimated had its advantages. Like stealing apples from market stalls or sneaking extra dessert when her parents weren't looking. By the second day, they'd reached the outskirts of Millhaven. The city loomed in the distance, a sprawling mass of stone and timber, smoke and noise. Mira had been there before, though she barely remembered the little details. The smell, a thick, pungent mixture of unwashed bodies, livestock, and something else she couldn't quite name. Desperation, maybe? They weren't staying in the city itself. Cousin Pip's family lived in a halfling enclave just outside the eastern gate, but too far to make before nightfall. They stopped, as they always did, in a collection of modest burrows and cottages that served as a way station for traveling halflings. It was late afternoon when they arrived, and the sky had begun to darken. "Storm's coming," her father muttered, glancing upward. The clouds were low and heavy, the color of old bruises. "We'll be fine," her mother said, though her voice lacked conviction. "We'll be inside soon enough." They weren't fine. The storm hit with a ferocity no one had predicted. Rain lashed down in sheets, turning the dirt roads into rivers of mud. Wind howled through the settlement, tearing thatch from roofs and sending shutters crashing. Mira huddled with her parents in one of the communal lodges, a long, low building that housed travelers. It was crowded, filled with other halfling families seeking shelter, and the air was thick with the smell of wet wool and fear. "It's just a storm," her mother whispered, pulling Mira close. "It'll pass." But it didn't pass. It grew worse. The wind shrieked like a living thing, and then, without warning, there was a sound like the world itself breaking. A terrible, splintering crack. The roof caved in. Mira remembered being thrown backward, her mother's arms suddenly gone. She remembered screaming, though she couldn't hear her own voice over the roar of the storm. She remembered the crushing weight of timber and stone, the suffocating darkness, the sharp pain in her shoulder. And then, after what felt like days but was probably only a few hours, hands were pulling her free. Voices shouted. Strands of light began to break through the darkness. She was alive. Her parents were not. Mira sat in the ruins of the lodge, shivering beneath a borrowed cloak. Around her, survivors wept and searched through the rubble. Bodies were being pulled free, too many bodies. The storm had devastated the entire settlement. Homes were destroyed. Families were shattered. Someone tried to speak to her, a kind-faced halfling woman with tears streaming down her cheeks, but Mira couldn't hear the words. Everything was muffled, distant, as though she were underwater. Her parents were dead. She was alone. The next few days were a blur. The survivors were evacuated to Millhaven, packed into wagons and led through the muddy roads to the city. Mira went with them because she didn't know what else to do. She had no way to get home, didn't even know which direction home was. The meadow, the burrow, the river, all of it felt like a dream now, something that had happened to someone else. Millhaven swallowed her whole. The refugees were deposited in the Crook, the poorest district of the city, a cramped maze of narrow alleys and crumbling tenements. The halfling woman who tried to comfort her, Mira never learned her name, left her with a family who promised to look after her. They didn't. Within a week, Mira was on the streets. She was 10 years old, alone in a city that didn't care if she lived or died. So she learned to survive. At first, it was just stealing food. A loaf of bread here, an apple there. Her small size helped. She could slip through crowds unnoticed, her nimble fingers quick and quiet. When shopkeepers did catch her, they usually just chased her off with a shout and a curse. Halflings were too small to be worth the trouble. But as the weeks turned into months, Mira grew bolder. She started picking pockets, lifting coin purses from distracted merchants. She learned which alleys to avoid, which gangs controlled which streets. She slept in doorways and under bridges, always moving, always watching. And slowly, something inside her began to change. The girl who'd run through the meadow, who'd stolen extra dessert and ignored her mother's calls, that girl was gone. In her place was someone harder, sharper. Someone who understood that the world didn't care about fairness or kindness. Someone who understood that survival was the only thing that mattered.